I am curious, are any of these analyst firms coming to you as a customer and seeking your input on like, because of these market shifts and these changes resulting from AI, how you think differently about this category? Meaning, like, are any of them coming to you and having that conversation, or are they kind of trying to pretend like it's not happening? Like, analysts is alive and well and all is the same. What does
Yeah.
that look like?
I had I had one of those conversations, and it's from one of the most amazing and mostly intelligent and intriguing persons I've ever worked with as an analyst. And this person literally said, I might be replacing myself here with AI in some way, shape, or form, or maybe the future of analysts may come to an end because, like, you can probably go prompt Claude and just say, hey, give me who's the best vendor for X. What I loved about it was the self-reflection, but also the intelligence that this person had to continue the relationship and therefore continuing to add value. The first obstacle is, do you even see it coming, and do you have the skills or the time to reflect on it? And number two is kind of like, I'm so powerful, I'm going to march towards my vision, and this is how I provide value not only to you as a vendor that I'm advising, but also this is how I provide value to the customers that are subscribing to my content through other ways and means.
I love that story. I love that sellers will get to hear how important that is. Thank you. Okay, that was so good.
The whole series is about exploring how people's buying decision takes place from like the moment something becomes necessary to a final decision.
Especially if you're like, well, we can do that too. It's like, why didn't we know that before? That would be helpful.
And I was like, what I wouldn't have given to have this back then.
That's exactly the type of stuff I was hoping to hear out of these interviews. So cool.
This is Buyer Truths, a research project about how tech buyers make decisions and what it means for how you sell.
My name is Jen Allen Knuth from Demand Gen with a J, and I'm here with my partner, Drew Giovanelli from Buried Winds.
Michael Scholes, VP of Product Marketing and Growth Marketing at Commerce. Thank you for joining us on the Buyer Truths podcast. Our goal is to hear stories from the buyer's point of view to learn, have sellers and marketers learn what good and bad experiences look like from the buyer. And you have stories today about analyst relationships. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Awesome. Pleasure to be here.
Awesome. So let's just start by setting the stage. At Commerce, you have contracts with analyst relations firms. What are the goals there? And how do you look at their value as you approach renewing contracts with firms like Gartner or Forrester?
Yeah, I think two main thoughts there. So I think fundamentally, and this is not unique to us or anyone really, but obviously analyst relations are kind of like a two-way street. One, you can use that access to analysts and experts to inform your product roadmap, your strategy, and there's plenty of kind of like value that you're receiving from the analysts because they are obviously deemed experts in that field. But it's also about selling your own company, and I'm using that word intentionally because you're kind of like pitching your product portfolio, your company to these analysts, and mostly in the hopes that you're somehow landing on a short list, right? Like, especially if you're part of the big companies like the SAPs, the Oracles, the Salesforces, like once you're in that top right quadrant, you're likely getting invited to be as part of some sort of short list, right? And so that has, I think, historically been kind of like the goal, right? Like you come in as a niche player, you kind of like earn your stripes. You might actually move over to a visionary because you're kind of like creating a category, and then you're popping up into the front. And obviously there's different ways and pathways on how you can actually end up in that top right quadrant, obviously referring to kind of like Gartner mostly now, but the waves and the marketscapes work similar. The second part is I've been here for a little over a year, and coming in, I knew we were going to do a major rebrand. So we were three companies before, kind of like IPO'd under one name really, and then sort of made acquisitions along the way over the last decade. But we've never had like a holistic kind of like what Google did with Alphabet, what Facebook did with Meta, right? We kind of like did that Halo brand approach as well. And we wanted to make sure that we are across all of these analysts so we can tell our story, but also because all of pretty much the top 30, 40 leaders in those organizations were brand spanking new. They themselves needed input as to how this company and this organization is being perceived. So in a lot of ways, it is a two-way street. But again, I think one thing that we will probably uncover as part of this podcast is really this notion: where is this all going? What are the considerations that you have to make, especially in the age of AI and answer engines? So yeah.
Did you feel like it was a necessity to buy from Forrester and Gartner?
At the time, yes. So let's say kind of like the renewal, kind of like the 2-3 months prior to me joining, that was 100% a necessity. Like the new leadership team needed to know where we stand, where we are being plotted. If you saw kind of like our trajectory, we were kind of like stale. And that's also why the leadership team came in, right? To kind of like pivot that, and it's quite intriguing. The other thing is maybe almost like a no, because if you look at our customer base, like a lot of our customer base is actually small and like really, I'm talking like $1-2 million kind of like retailers, or like we have an amazing little B2B company in the UK that just sells batteries, right? And they do their 1.5 million and they're happy. But they're not the ICP for buying a very expensive Gartner subscription to be advised and guided on tech decisions. So it's very intriguing, but given the many 10,000s of customers that we have, even that 1% that sits over $1 billion is still significant to continue to invest in these analyst relations. And I think especially how quickly AI is changing, not just like in terms of adopting and OpenAI, ChatGPT here and there, but the way that the new category of agentic commerce for us specifically has been created. We wanted to make sure that we're at the forefront, but given everything is kind of like changing so quickly, we also wanted to make sure that we have a pulse on the market through these analysts.
What's it like having a renewal conversation with someone you feel almost forced to buy, given your position?
Right.
But I'm sure they're offering different sets of things, right? You could buy at different scale and scope. And your sales relationship really matters at deals of that size.
Yep. Yeah. And honestly, all of the ones that I can remember are acting very, very differently, like a different sales methodology almost. Some are a little bit more consultative. Some really want to genuinely help you. And others are just hustling. And like, don't get me wrong, I don't have anything against hustling, but like I remember one particular account manager, this person was like going out of their way to like talk to the CPO and the strategy officer, and like the strategy officer was already on the seat as well in that sort of subscription, went to every product manager, and the common motion was just simply for them to like forward me the email and said, hey, well, Michael's leading this effort and he's the budget holder and he makes the decisions. And so I think there was a lot of trust erosion just by hustling too hard. And again, lots of kudos to that person. But again, if that was made abundantly clear, and at one point I became very, very adamant that like, hey, if we want to do this, this is how it's working.
So I love that you called this out, right? Because as someone who spent my entire career in sales, you are not in sales unless someone has told you 65 times that you have to multi-thread and you have to build buy-in and all of this stuff. So for a seller who has not been in your shoes, been on the buyer side, what about going around and having all these conversations and having all these emails come back to you? Like, why is that so painful for you as an executive, not just as it relates to the sales process, but as it relates to how you show up inside the company?
I mean, lots to unpack there. I think my biggest frustration was just like the new relationship and the early trust that was lost already, because I made it abundantly clear that, and even the CEO and the chief strategy officer at that time made it abundantly clear, hey, Michael is leading this, and still kind of like experience that, was just like erosion of trust from the get-go. So I think frustrating for me was the fact that there was a clear budget holder, there was a clear decision maker. And again, I'm not making my decisions in a vacuum by any means. And I also want to make sure that my product leaders have access to research and insights.
Is there a way that your rep there could have handled that conversation differently if their intention was to say, I'm exploring if there are different use cases? Like, would there have been a conversation they could have had with you where you would have been more open-minded to opening doors?
Like having the trust in me that I will make those. Like, I'm not a gatekeeper. Like, I want, again, everyone to be successful. So that's number one. Number two is, I think we are in this unique situation in my current company where we have multiple portfolios, we have multiple brands, multiple companies, multiple products. And so my initial and genuine inclination was, given that we have so many other products, is there other quadrants that I should be part of? Is there a voice of the customer reports? Is there other thought leadership report? Is there research reports that you want to drive and you actually want to be informed by us and that makes your report better? So like, I asked all of those questions. So I think if some of these account managers would have double clicked more into that, to then say, okay, well, he's clearly interested. And obviously, if the analysts feel the same way and it resonates the same way with them, there would be an opportunity to sign up for more, get more people involved. Because again, I'm also one person, so I can't scale it myself either. And so, yeah, I think there could have been one or two ways, yeah.
Okay, two questions. First, did the way these companies interact with you affect how much you bought from them? Or do you think the outcome was the same, given the necessity?
For some of the, I would call them tier 2 or tier 3 analysts, I actually bought more. And I'm not just saying that I bought more of the same, which is more seats, more subscription, more reprint rights, things of that nature. I'm saying I invited them on stage to speak at an event. I'm like doing roundtables with them. I'm bringing them in as a thought leader. I'm doing webinars with them. So the ones that were more intrigued, the ones that actually built up the relationships, that maybe sometimes gave me great insights or like behind the scenes kind of like information. And again, I'm not saying that they kind of like revealed anything secretive or anything, but yeah, I bought more.
Yeah, and I want to do a quick follow-up because you kind of hinted that you see things changing in the analyst relations world. And so let's fast forward to the next renewal cycle. How does your interactions with these teams in this past sale affect how you might buy from them at the next renewal?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's intriguing, right? I think one of the things that definitely changed, and again, this is probably more of a general statement, but you're getting more and more locked into these longer term contracts. But I think, again, the whole model needs to change. And like, if I look at some of these analysts, they themselves actually had differentiation from each other because there was a different cadence in how these reports are coming out. There's a different quantity in which these reports came out for the same like area, because in some cases I felt either the cadence was too few. I mean, some of these reports only come out every 2 years, and I'm like, and especially in the age of AI, like you got like, I don't know who doesn't have whiplash at the moment for how often things change. So I think it's almost like if you're bringing out a report every 2 years to take a snapshot of the market, you're probably doing it wrong. The business model, the commercialization, the monetization probably needs to change, especially if you're looking at these analyst reports where all of that stuff is gated. Like most people, the eyeballs have moved to these like answer engine, and you might do your research on these answer engines. The answer engines will not go to any of these like analyst pages because they're all gated. They probably go to review sites and Reddit and what have you. So again, is your end buyer the person that you're trying to influence? actually reading the reports that you're spending months and months to prepare and brief analysts on.
You said a couple learning points for sellers around multi-threading and how they engage with you and include you in that process. You mentioned listening, and there was potentially more on the table if they had heard your needs.
Mhm.
What did people do well? Did you have any great experiences in the selling process with any of these firms?
Yeah. I mean, probably kind of like the tier 2, tier 3 kind of like analyst firms that I refer to, because they sat down and kind of like really took a good look at what's there. Kind of like saw again, like in my particular position, like we're talking about a major like Halo company rebrand. We're talking about bringing multiple products together, products that didn't have a lot of love before, and kind of like really sitting there and like maybe even talking to their own customers and say, you know what, you really have something here, but you're not talking about it enough. And so just the simple ping, right? Like I think deals just move differently when you have their phone number and you just send an iMessage over, right? Or your little WhatsApp, right? I think if you're at that point with any sort of buyer-vendor relationship.
Jen, how have you seen sellers move from discovery call to having the cell number of the champion? How do you make that relationship?
Yeah, I think it ideally should happen as you're in the renewal process, because you're going to either need, like for me, if it's a cell number, if it's a Slack connect, those in my mind are kind of the same thing. But I think it's all about the positioning of, we're likely, typically when we go through a renewal, there's a lot of back and forth on the following questions. For the really high impact ones, is it okay if I use this form of communication when it's something that I urgently need your attention on? Otherwise, what would be your second choice? I think as long as it's framed around like not what I want, but what the buyer wants in terms of communication is just how I kind of think about it, so that if they are for some reason completely opposed to using their mobile, they're not offended by you asking.
Yeah, I've actually just personally had a lot of success selling where someone's late stage pipeline and asking them, hey, do you prefer to communicate over email or Slack? And they say, hey, our 90% of our work communications is over Slack. Let's just connect there. And all of a sudden, the response time goes from days to hours or less. So like, yeah, medium really matters. And I think it doesn't have to be like, how well do you know this person to get their cell number? To your point, it's just, can you get into the channel that they communicate most frequently and are most comfortable with? Michael, great to see you. Thanks for sharing that story.
Likewise, loved it. Thank you all.
All right, have a great day.
I'm loving these renewal conversations, because we often think of renewal as like not sales or it's an afterthought, but it's as much a sale as anything else. So I love that.
Absolutely. And especially with all the new options out there, this is actually a really interesting question, which is, you tell the story about selling against status quo. I would love to hear from you more about like, shit, what if you are status quo selling against the new thing? That's like an interesting story too.
Yeah, and I think the interesting thing about renewals is you have to play offense and defense, right? So this question came up the other day. It was like, well, why would I have to do all this if I already have the relationship? It's like, but what if your competitor did it and you didn't? So you have to understand, being the status quo, it's the same question. It's just you're in the winner's seat right now. What are all the alternative ways this client could solve the problem? Which are the new and shiny ones this year? Because those are going to be the ones that are most likely to tempt your buyer. And if we are not preempting them considering that, and we're not helping them think through it, then we're basically letting them decide. And that's, I think, what I see a lot right now is companies are getting more surprise no's right at the time of renewal, and then everybody's scrambling. And then you've got resource allocation all going to huge fires, and as the rest of these fires build up over time. So it just like, it breaks the whole account management model when you're always chasing that last like 2 weeks of the quarter instead of thinking about the next quarter ahead. So I just think it's like account management is such a beast for that reason.